This is how it works at most companies today. You have an idea. I want to improve lifetime value, reduce churn. You then have a marketer go over to the data team, runs a bunch of SQL, passes it back to the marketing person, say, oh, too big, too small. Meanwhile, that takes days, weeks, months. We solve that problem by basically making it self-serve, investing in the underlying data infrastructure, the semantic layer.
When you talk about like these swarms of agents and this idea of constantly adjusting campaigns in flight, is that one of the use cases?
Agents can look at the data schema, the underlying business logic, and say, aha, in the past, these are the sorts of things that worked well. So let's surface those proactively, right? Then you can do stuff, right? You got to figure out when you want to talk to them, how, what sequence. And then you got to run those experiments and then learn from them. At each step of the way, there's agents to basically do those tasks with and alongside humans.
What's up, everyone? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Chris O'Neill, CEO at GrowthLoop. Chris is former Director PM at HSBC, President of Google Canada, CEO at Evernote, Chief Business Officer at Glean, and Chief Growth Officer at Xero. In this episode, we explore findings from the 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index report, how to use Agentic AI for marketing campaign execution, how reinforcement learning optimizes GenAI content, how to use red team drills to test AI data ownership, and why modern marketing teams need internal AI regulation roles and skill ladders. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from one of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's Knak, and tell them we sent you. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
Yeah, let's have a spicy conversation on Martech.
Let's do it. The 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index that GrowthLoop, your team, put together is excellent. There's a couple of timely questions that I think a lot of teams are wrestling with that it answers. One of them for me was like, are top performers ahead of the AI curve, or are they focusing on the foundations, and are they kind of seeing a lot of the AI stuff as hype? And are top performers focused on speed and quantity, or does quality still win in this like sea of sameness with Gen AI? I've chatted with a lot of folks that are betting on patience and polish, but the report that your team put together actually shows the opposite with both of those takes. So top performing marketing teams are already scaling with AI and well ahead of the curve, and their focus is on speed for driving growth. So, for some, maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call. For others, I'm sure it's like confirmation. Might seem a bit obvious that teams that are using AI are working fast and growing faster. We kind of get the why behind this. I'm interested to unpack the mystery of like the how with you. So let's dig into like how teams can implement AI today, how they can grow faster with that. And maybe we can prepare marketers and marketing ops folks for the next crazy 5 years that are to come in AI. So let's do it. The first question I have for you, Chris, is where do you think AI can realistically improve things that are like strategic level, like company profitability, maybe even by like 0.5% in the next 12 months? Like, what are some of the key areas you think marketing strategy leaders should be focusing on first?
Yeah, it's about results. Always. It's always about results. So yeah, I'm a big fan of having teams articulate very specifically how they're going to drive top line growth or lifetime value and or cost efficiency. So that's what this is all about, right? It doesn't surprise me at all that those that are winning or those that are, we talk about speed. Actually, I'm a bigger fan of saying velocity, because speed just for its own sake is kind of useless. It has to be speed combined with direction. You have to be clear on what problems you're solving. and then use systems. AI fits in nicely to basically go accomplish, get in that direction more quickly than others. So that's really the top takeaway. So being able to articulate with precision how AI is going to drive and improve your business, your profit and loss statement. That's where it starts. And there's a whole bunch of nuance, of course, that I'm looking forward to diving into with you today.
Yeah, so the 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index highlight. I'm going to call this out a few times because we're going to clip up parts of this episode for this.
Sure.
But
Uh,
many marketers that are using AI today, the first use case that comes to mind is like analyzing performance, taking a
uh,
ton of data, coming up with insights from that, letting the machine kind of tell you what to make sense out of that data. So
uh,
analyzing performance. But a lot fewer marketers are using it to act on insights, like to do
mhm.
something with that data. What do you think is the reason behind holding folks back from kind of closing that loop?
Yeah, there's lots. I mean, think synthesis, using AI to synthesize things is a powerful use case in work and in personal, and that's great. It's a very powerful tool to do that. So it can cut down the time it takes to understand and get real insights. And that's great. That's a good place to start. But it's so much more than that, right? Anytime, any insight sort of action is kind of useless to me, right? So it's about actionable insights. So how do you take an insight or proactively use AI to surface insights, like who you should actually be speaking to at any one point in time? So it's applying it to specific steps of an integrated workflow to make any one of those steps more automated or shorter in time, and then combining or stitching them together. Sometimes we use the term agent swarm, really to swarm together to kind of move through an end-to-end marketing loop. These are the things that are starting to separate the teams that are pulling away the best from the rest, so to speak. We're early in that journey, so some of those tasks are better than others, but it really doesn't just stop at, "Hey, I synthesize. What am I looking at? Here are some insights." You actually have to go do something about it and do it alongside humans with agents as part of your team.
So give me one example that comes to mind there, because like a lot of folks will chat about AI agents taking over
Yeah,
some of these things. You mentioned like swarm of agents. Like one of the main
yeah,
topics that I think is easiest to grasp for the listeners here, like this whole
sure.
idea of manual campaign blasting. There's a lot of marketers that are still doing this manually. They're coming up with a segment of audience. They're coming up with the message, they're deciding the time, and they're sending that out. And there's
Yeah,
some folks that have gravitated to more advanced ways of doing that and using ML and having propensity models
yeah.
decide what
Mhm.
is the right segment of folks for the right
Right.
message. When you talk about like these swarms of agents and this idea of, like constantly adjusting campaigns in flight, is that one of the use cases? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, part of the reason I'm back in the marketing landscape in the this world is it's so in need of being refreshed. It's so stale.
Yeah.
Most companies are doing what you just described. They're basically segmenting, and they're doing what I sometimes call waterfall marketing. It's like you break everyone into a segment and you blast the same data. It's like it's so ridiculous, right? It's just like no wonder brands have unfavorable scores, and right. It's just like it can be so much better. And if I go back to the founding of this company, it really resulted from a breakdown between marketing teams and data teams, right? So typically, and this is how it works at most companies today, you have an idea. I want to improve lifetime value, reduce churn, whatever you're looking to do. You then have a marketer go over to the data team. And sometimes I like to think of this as like a bread line, right? Like the marketing person goes over to the data team and says, please, can I have a little bit of bread? Right? That marketing team has to wait there while the data person basically runs a bunch of SQL, passes it back to the marketing person, say, oh, too big, too small, little Goldilocks action, right? Meanwhile, that takes days, weeks, months, just to basically figure out who you might want to speak to. Who would be an interesting set of your customers or your prospects that would be receptive to something that would drive a business outcome? And we solved that problem by basically making it self-serve, investing in the underlying data infrastructure, the semantic layer to build confidence and trust and consistency in the answers and the business logic, right? So that's all taken care of. Now, agents get even better, right? Agents can look at the data schema, the underlying business logic, and say, aha, in the past, these are the sorts of things that worked well. relative to that business objective you were trying to accomplish. So let's surface those proactively, right? That's a very specific example. People are using our product precisely that way every day. So you can get hundreds or thousands of these different audiences that are proactively suggested and more powerfully suggested than any one human can do. So that's where it starts. Of course, that's not the end. Then you can do stuff, right? You got to figure out when you want to talk to them, how, what sequence, call those journeys. And then you got to run those experiments and then learn from them, right? Write the information back into your data cloud in one place, not 5 places, but one place. And then, you basically can learn and lather, rinse, and repeat, do it all over again. So at each step of the way, there's agents that we're using to basically do those tasks with and alongside humans. And I dare say they're actually doing a better job in many, many of the tasks. Yet humans are in the loop and will remain in the loop for the foreseeable future because of their creativity, because of their ability to understand consumers on a different level. So that's just for starters, Phil. Like that's the early part, but thinking of agent swarms in an end-to-end fashion. That's why we call our company GrowthLoop. It's really about an end-to-end closed loop. And those that think that way holistically and then use AI at every step, I believe will be the ones that will be able to go faster and ultimately move the needle on growth, or the objective that they care about most.
Very cool. I want to break that use case apart in a couple
Yeah.
different segments there. So there's like the segmentation part, like as the first segment
Uh-huh.
here, like figuring out the right audience based on some of the past data. So maybe the
Mhm.
marketer is surfacing up this one campaign that we want to do. We think it's going to improve LTV. Who should
Yeah.
we send this to? There's also
Right.
the part about like, okay, maybe we have the right audience for improving LTV. They're the right candidates for it. Then there's also the part about like, what is the right message to send out to those folks? And
Correct.
that's where
Correct.
some of the stuff around generative AI comes up. And
Uh-huh.
there's some risk with this like idea of algorithmic sameness, like in this
Uh-huh.
future vision that some of your customers are working in and what you're kind of building. How do you avoid this idea of algorithmic sameness where every
Yeah.
agent converges on the same optimizations, kind of
Yeah.
killing differentiation when it comes to creating content and messages?
Yeah, I'll pull that apart even upstream of when you get your question about algorithmic sameness. So it's a it's a valid concern. I'm more optimistic than most people, I think, on that. But there's actually an interplay between artificial intelligence and machine learning, and more specifically, reinforcement learning. So you talked earlier about propensity models, price elasticity models. They have an important role to play. A lot of people conflate those two, but it's very specific. Like we're experimenting all the time with reinforcement learning to basically help with the messaging and the timing, because you are allowed to, it'd be silly to not use the vast amounts of data from previous experiments, right? That's a machine learning, or more specifically, a reinforcement learning opportunity or problem. We then ingest those to help inform that journey, right? So it's not just starting with an audience and then like that lives in as an island. You actually layer in the power of the data science teams at companies to basically better inform it. Your question about algorithmic sameness is interesting. I had a really interesting chat with one of the leading lights at Gap on the creative side. And I was so delighted to basically hear his perspective. This is a person that has grown up designing using like his hands, and his belief is very enlightened that this is going to allow him, a designer, to be more creative. And I believe that's true with marketing too. It's going to remove the mundane to focus on the exquisite, right? So I'm not really worried about that. We're going to be able to expand the amount of things we do, untethered from human capacity. And these agents can work 24/7. They can operate autonomously. Provide them the context, and they can go do things we can't even imagine today. But core to that is removing the mundane stuff so that humans can actually be more creative. So I don't subscribe to the, oh, it's all going to be a sea of sameness, right? If anything, that's what's happening today, right? If you look
Yeah.
at B2B brands or most brands, they feel like a sea of sameness. So this is an opportunity, if the humans are freed up to do what they're best at, ingenuity, creativity, understanding the zeitgeist, right? Like what's happening in the world at any one point in time. Humans are really good at that, and distilling that and having creative, fresh ideas that you then feed in. And then the agents can help magnify and basically bring those to life. So I think that's the enlightened view, that this is going to allow us to do more things, more creativity, as opposed to less.
Very cool. So I think that you're kind of saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like some of the parts that agents can automate, the segmentation, the insights, the reporting, that
Yeah.
stuff that maybe was a bit more redundant for the humans. But when it comes to the messaging and the creativity and the strategy behind that, that's where
Yeah.
we're going to be able to come up with fresh new ideas to avoid that sea of sameness. And if we don't have that human ingredient in there, that's where that the sea of AI content kind of all looking the same. Because like you said, like we're seeing that today. Like my inbox is flooded with AI agents that are doing
Yeah.
outbound stuff and they
Yeah.
all look the same. They're all the same template variables
Yeah.
in there. Some of them
Yeah.
maybe aren't AI agents, but we're seeing all that on LinkedIn, right? Like all the posts on LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
you can just
Yeah.
spot the ChatGPT written post just because they have 17 M dashes in the first paragraph. Like that's the part where I am excited also like
Yeah.
you, where like if the humans are actually subscribing to this thing about focusing on the creativity and not just handing the whole like content and messaging
Yeah.
generation part to AI.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, I think when I talk to CIOs or chief marketing officers, they're like, in addition to some of the things we're talking about and some of the things that came through clearly in the report, most of them are just drowning the teams are drowning in complexity, right? There's all this bloat, there's all this tool bloat, and there's just like higher expectations. It just becomes really hard for people to execute. So, my aspiration, my belief, and we're starting to see the leading teams do this, is like, you're going to remove some of the complexity, right? You're going to allow agents to reduce the complexity, right? I think the overall job of leaders, and I think we kind of say this as succinctly as possible, is like reduce the distance between I have an insight and I want to deliver impact, right? Right now, that's a really long and twisty, windy road.
Yeah.
Idea to impact. I'm really excited because, that will compound over time. But if you reduce the time, allow you to do more iterative things. That requires creativity, but it requires relentless pushing on like speed, right, and velocity. And the tools like AI is an amazing lever to do just that.
Yeah, I think the road is long and windy, especially in some of the more regulated industries, like when we talk about
Uh-huh.
enterprise or like health tech or fintech. And I
Yeah,
think one of the areas where a lot of folks are getting stuff is that risk in those more regulated environments. How do you think about decisions that we should be comfortable delegating to these agents? And what is the kind of like human in the loop fail safe for some of that stuff?
yeah,
Like the AI and marketing performance index showed 86% of respondents said AI is better
yeah.
with human intervention. In your view, like where should marketers never fully automate? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and so there's a lot in there. I mean, I'm sure there's self-preservation in the answer there.
Yeah.
86% is an awfully high number. But I actually happen to believe that, as we just discussed, humans do have a role to play in that loop. Um, this is a question that I ask often of teams, as a board member or as an executive, or when we talk with other of my peers. You have to be really clear about governance. You have to be clear about when are you going to let agents run autonomously, and where are you not. So, look, that just depends upon, yes, is the regulatory risk, right? If you get this wrong, is there going to be is there going to be a trust issue with your customers? Where if you hallucinate, it's going to be a problem. Is going to be regulatory thing you need to adhere to. So obviously, there need to be guardrails here, and companies need to be really clear about who, like data strategy, who owns what. I'm a big fan of red team drills, right? So you actually simulate hallucination, IP leakage. Like, be really thoughtful about these things. But I think it's actually mostly an excuse. I think the reality is AI is going to be an equally big lever, maybe even bigger lever for some of the slower moving regulated companies. Let me give you an example, right? In financial services, you have to record a lot of the interactions between your customers, right? AI can do that, of course. Then you have to preserve those records for regulatory reasons. So you can now actually use AI to understand not just the sentiment, but actually, are you adhering to regulatory requirements? That's a really hard thing to do today. AI can actually help you with that. And there are many, many examples, right? Other thing, these regulatory industries, often the excuse is, oh, we've grown through acquisition. We've got all these different tools and systems that don't talk to one another. Well, good news. Things like MCP, agent to agent, allow, there will be protocols that allow exchange across disparate systems, to exchange context, to allow the agents to do their work. I mean, this is the stuff that is actually allowing to overcome the decades of excuses that they cannot do this stuff. So, look, I think regulatory capture is one thing. That's fine. It has a role to play, but I don't think they're exempt from the velocity and from the innovation that's going to be unlocked. So, every industry has a role to play here. Or AI, sorry, say it differently. AI has a role to play in all these industries, regardless of whether regulated or not.
Yeah, to your point about velocity though, like the marketing ops person on the ground in a startup that's like, 20 people to 100
Yeah.
people, they're supporting a team of like 5, 10 marketers. The marketer sees a new AI agent tool, they want to hook that up in the stack. We're talking about doing that really, really fast. The marketing ops person can get that set up. They
Sure.
can do something really fun quickly. In the health tech center, we're talking about PII and PHI, and that
Sure.
marketing ops person isn't enabled to do that. Like they could do it in a startup
Yeah.
environment, but in enterprise, they literally cannot. There is a
Correct.
data governance person that needs to okay that. There is an IT person that needs to
Uh-huh.
okay it. There's a legal counsel team that needs to decide whether we do this or not. So when you talk about velocity, it sounds really cool to say that enterprise teams for sure have a lot of use cases and there are tons of benefit there. But from like an actual practical standpoint, what are your thoughts on getting all of those teams together for that compliance and regulation piece so that we can enable velocity? Because today it's way easier said than done.
Of course. Yeah. And AI can have a role at every one of those things, right? Legal, right? You can sample, you can sample the creative, you can sample whatever you want and have tools surface where there's risk. Right. So I just don't buy it. I think that that's the excuse of many countries and regulated industries that it's like, we're sorry, we're different. The reason this technology is as transformative as it is, it's going to cut across every industry, every country. It just is. And again, like anything, there'll be some downsides. There'll be some people using it foolishly or using it for nefarious purposes, and like we can't let the bad outweigh the massive amount of good. That's the same with any technology. This one's just different on so many dimensions. One dimension in particular is the work itself. Right, a lot of these technology shifts, if you think about mobile phone or just the advent of computers, it changed the interaction between information and consumers. It changed how we consume information, essentially. Google, amazing. They're providing information, the world's information at your fingertips. Amazing, right? That's great. This has all that and more. The more part is it changes how work gets done,
Mm.
right? It actually reduces the amount of time that it takes to do things and to do them well. So again, I think like a lot of the companies that are lagging around, like they're just going to die. Like if they don't lean into this stuff, I don't want to be dramatic about it, but it is just true. Like this is fundamentally going to change the work of the work, and those who get it, great. Those who don't, I'm afraid they're just not going to be relevant. Probably in a faster downward cycle than any other innovation shift that we've seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I think like one of the greatest things that AI has done for marketing ops folks is this renewed understanding of the importance of data quality. I chat with marketing
Uh,
ops teams all the time who've had a couple of like epics or projects on the roadmap, deprioritized quarter after
yeah,
quarter to improve data quality. And now
yeah,
we have CEOs and boards saying like, we need to fix deduplication, we need to fix
right.
enrichment, we need to fix our bidirectional sync with Salesforce and all our other tools. What are your thoughts on this idea of data strategy and this importance of data quality and having, like you called it, a rights map and like a current ledger of
Yeah.
who owns, accesses, and can train on our most valuable data sets? Like, who should own this? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. I mean, you don't have an AI strategy if you don't have a really sharp and great data strategy. You just
Yeah.
don't. If we go back 5, 6 plus years ago, people didn't understand this, right? The rise of the data clouds has really made this really clear. So that we crossed that chasm like years ago. So even the more laggard, late majority companies understand that they need to get their data together. You just look at the rise of data clouds and how prominent they are and how effective they are as a store for your data, not just your customer data, your marketing performance data, your transaction data, loyalty, et cetera. It's so obvious that that's where you should be putting your data, right? And I'm not advocating any one particular data cloud, but just to say, let's look at how effectively they've grown, and they've grown for cost and security and AI reasons and more. So we're well since past that time. That used to be the case. So yeah, being really clear about governance of data, who has rights, who basically is responsible, basically make sure you track and then understand what data is being used for what. Like that needs to be treated. Think of like asset management, like this laptop I have at a company, like we track like assets like that. Historically haven't done that with data, which is arguably one of the most important assets any company has. So similar to the red team drill I mentioned before, you need to simulate to make sure that your practices hold up in an emergency, or that if something goes wrong, you know who is responsible for what. When there's IP leakage, when there's hallucination in something core. I think you have to have a mindset that data really matters, and then you have to have a mindset that there's going to be stuff that goes wrong. This is frontier technology, and I think the teams that are succeeding have realistic expectations. They basically don't think it's going to solve everything and not have hallucinations or have failures. It's going to, and then just get over it and have processes in place to know who's going to be responsible for what when this thing doesn't work the way you expect it to. That's just the nature of new technology. So maybe that's how I think about the data piece and how it relates to governance and red team drills and like really being thoughtful and really nimble with the underlying data itself.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero. You've invested thousands in your marketing funnel, targeted the right ICP, spent weeks A/B testing, and optimized for conversion at every step. Finally, a high-intent prospect fills out your demo form, and then nothing. Your nurtured lead sits in a queue while you chase them with, "How's Thursday at 2 p.m.?" Meanwhile, your competitor is already on a discovery call. That's not just frustrating, that's revenue walking away. With Revenue Hero, you can qualify, route, and book leads with the right rep, so your team can start real conversations right away. For the ops folks listening, Revenue Hero syncs meeting data to your CRM, auto-credits no-shows, recalibrates when reps go on vacation, and has a ton of smart features you won't find anywhere else. If you're spending to drive demand, don't lose it at the last mile. Visit revenuehero.io/demo today.
This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new warehouse native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. Super cool. Unpack that red team drill idea a little bit more. Like, is this something that GrowthLoop has tested internally when you're rolling out new things? Like, give me a practical example there.
Yeah. I mean, I more think so. The practice has taken hold in almost any company when you're simulating a cyber event of some form. Something happens, and it's impossible to be too clear as to who's responsible for what when you're going through something like that. When there's like you're under a lot of pressure and time pressure, and there's consequences, right? Erosion of trust with your customer is is really a big problem in companies. So this concept of red team is basically simulating something that is not ideal, so that if and when it does happen, you know who does what. So yeah, we do similar things here. Any great company I've ever been a part of does something equivalent for cyber. And I'm just here to suggest that you need to do the same at a much more micro level with your AI strategy, so that people are really clear and can avoid any of the missteps that inevitably will happen. So you can recover very quickly.
Very cool. There is like a lot of folks who do believe that one of the roles that's going to come out of marketing in the next couple of years is similar to the governance title, but it's almost like an AI regulator for marketing output, like marketing stuff that comes out of these AI agents to prevent PR disasters and like you mentioned,
Yeah.
like the erosion of customer trust. Like
Right.
the best example I have, I know you're an avid golfer. I
Mhm.
don't know if you're familiar with like the PGA's disaster with generative AI images a
No,
couple of
tell me.
years back
Yeah.
now.
No, I'm
But
not familiar with it.
they had a bunch of different golfers and they were trying to use AI to generate finishing the headshot. So the headshot was like like stopping at the chest, and then they're like, "Oh, we use generative AI to finish the body." And all of the white golfers had a nice professional business
Eh,
outfits, clean background, and the couple of golfers that were colored had like work outfits and they were like constructions and working in the fields. And so it was like a bunch of folks were just like, how did the marketer allow this to get posted
yeah,
on social? Like
yeah,
no one thought of the bias involved in the models. Like what message are we sending? So anyways, it's still live on their social media page. You can still find it today. I referenced it a couple of times, but it's the
yeah,
perfect example of like human in the loop in this certain
yeah,
situation here. It's
yeah,
a cool idea, like use generative AI to finish headshots and like, oh, cool. But
yeah,
there's a ton of bias in these things and hallucinations. And I think the red team
yeah,
drill would have come in handy here. Like, what if a PR disaster happens because of something that just came out of our model, right?
yeah. Yeah, that's just unacceptable, and, like, that's true of any process, right? Like, you need to build an
Yeah.
attack. I just don't understand how companies can do that, especially when there's, that there's trust at stake, and, yeah, that's how brands get built, right? By being in tune with customers, and, like, that's an obvious violation of, like, any sensibility, in any brand, in the world, so
Yeah.
that's a failure of process more than the tech itself.
Yeah, yeah, totally fair. Let's talk about some of the other roles here. So, like the role of a marketer was already
Mhm.
really misunderstood in the
Yeah,
last couple of years. Now, with like AI and GTM being one of the most obvious use cases for
yeah,
AI, marketers are feeling a ton of pressure. It comes out in the report in a bunch of
yeah,
cases. Marketers are expected to do more with less and work a
yeah.
lot faster. What skills do you think our top 100, top 50 marketing leaders need to have that maybe they don't have today in the next like 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to, hey, how can you move with agility? How do you enhance velocity? That requires a mindset that says, hey, we're going to move quickly. We're going to move quickly in a certain direction. So you need to be clear about what direction you're going to. So being able to sort through a lot of different disparate information to set a strategy and then be clear about how you're going to get there more quickly. That requires comfort with failure because you're going to actually have missteps along the way. If you're going to move quickly, you don't sit around and like try to produce one campaign, whatever that means, and then study it like for weeks and weeks and weeks. You need to get multiple campaign ideas or things out, experiments into the world, and be okay knowing that like you're going to not get perfect statistical significance at every step of the way. You're gonna have to try to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Like, that's a mindset. I think, working cross-functionally is always something that's important, but the interplay between data teams, data science teams, marketers, and the tech, the underlying tech, the infrastructure, building out these models and basically flexing them, evaluating the models, right? The way you get ahead of that stuff is actually evaluate that efficacy of any model. So we have teams that are looking at all the different models each week to basically see which tasks are better or worse than others. So evaluation is another skill as well that is not necessarily something that historically has been around. But if I zoom out for just a sec to summarize, basically any big innovation in artificial intelligence, whether that's whether it's self-driving cars, whether it's advertising with Google in the first place, whether it's Billy Bean with Moneyball, right? There's three ingredients, maybe four if you include what I just said about eval. So like you have a step function improvement in the data, the underlying data, right? We've got lots of different data. We've had a step function improvement in the real-time nature of data. That's one. Secondly, you need task-specific algorithmic improvements. Right, so when we think of these agent swarms, right, it's not only the steps individually, right? No, who are we going to talk to? What am I going to talk to them about? In what sequence? Each of those are steps in an end-to-end marketing flow. But then you have task-specific algorithms that govern how the things fit together, right? And when you get improvements in those algorithms, then you get a unlock. And then the last is maybe sounds hand wavy, but you need courage.
Mm,
It's like you need the courage, the chutzpah to basically say, we're going to try something that isn't perfectly figured out, but we're going to do it anyways. We're going to do it because it's a better way. And each of those different iterations or like step function improvements in the past, those are the common ingredients. And that's what you need to inculcate in your teams, really. So, and overcome the nonsense, overcome the timidity, right? People just need to lean into this stuff.
Very cool. A lot of folks say curiosity is kind of the first thing. Like, oh yeah, people need to, you know, research, go down rabbit holes, like figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah.
But you're the first one to mention courage, and I think that's a
Yeah.
really powerful idea here because there is a lot of hesitancy with this stuff. But the 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index did show that the top marketers, the ones that work at teams that are growing the fastest, are taking this stuff very seriously. They're taking AI seriously. They're scaling it, if not like thinking about it mindfully, and they're upskilling their skills. These
Yeah.
marketers, like they own their own careers, right? So they're like helping the companies by doing this stuff, but they're also investing in their own careers by taking this stuff seriously. But not every company can afford to hire like a top 100 marketer that has that courage and that curiosity. How do you see your responsibility as the CEO or like the responsibility of the boards to plan to upskill or to hire folks that, or to like acquire these skills for the marketers on the team right now? What are your thoughts there?
I don't subscribe to the premise, by the way. Like, I
Mm,
don't think it's about affording, like these tools. Subscription to these tools are $20 a month. Like, I mean, like it's cheap as chips, as they say in Australia. Like, it's like these tools are amazing. There's a reason the underlying companies that are offering them, at least the ones that are effective, are growing at the rate they are. So I don't buy that. I just like everyone has access to these tools now, right? That's the amazing thing. That's the ChatGPT moment. It
mm,
caught the creativity of everyone, the imagination. So,
mhm,
so I just don't subscribe to it. I think you need to basically think of these as like teammates. Literally at Growth Loop, we're always thinking about what most people are familiar with job ladders or career ladders. What's expected in a different job family at different stages of one's career. What does the basics look like, and what does mastery look like? We're doing the same with AI, your AI competency, right? So to say, hey, what's expected by function in a different seniority in terms of the use of AI? So being explicit and intentional about that, not just saying, hey, we're an AI first company and like, thinking that osmosis will kick in and it will magically happen. Being intentional, just as you are with a career ladder. So that's one specific example. But I think it has to run through centrally through a talent strategy, right? Whether any size company, basically think about developing, acquiring or attracting, developing, and then retaining people. If your value proposition doesn't have AI fluency or the ability to basically use these powerful technologies to improve and change the work, then like I think you're just going to get left behind. So you need to be intentional about it with your talent strategy. So like, and I think like the top like 100 or whatever, depending on the size of the company, you need to be really clear about it, and you need to map it out just like you would sort of a succession planning strategy, right? You need to think about how do we enable each one of these top N 100 people in a company to make sure that this isn't like optional, or you just leave it to hope. Hope's not a strategy here.
I love it. Love your thoughts there. So we kind of talked about like human in the loop a bunch of times here. I love that Growth Loop's philosophy around this isn't just like we're replacing humans for a lot of this stuff, and you can just like buy our agents to replace a lot of that stuff. There is still a core human in the loop component to this. What do you
Yeah.
think happens to the role of the marketer in the next few years when most of these companies finally do roll out AI agents within their current strategies? Is the future of marketers becoming way less of these like execution folks, and that means like marketers themselves become more like editors of the process, the journeys that, as you guys kind of call them, or we become like product managers? What are your thoughts on like this evolution?
Yeah, I mean, I think mediocrity goes away. I think any of the 80% of the execution focus only goes away, and that gets repurposed elsewhere. That's not to say that like certain functions and jobs won't go away. They will fundamentally change and probably go away. But I'm of the belief that yeah, your skills will be retooled. Yeah, editing. You mentioned curiosity. Yeah, curiosity. Coming up with ideas, creativity, working across the different parts of the organization, facility with technology. Right. I think the folks who sit in one channel with one tool and, just kind of put their head down and do their job like that. That's not the way this is going to work. They're going to be
Yeah.
working more like in technology agile pods. Right? If you think of like how people develop software, it'll be similar in marketing, right? You have a very small self-contained team that's going to move end to end and move very quickly. So it will look different fundamentally. Again, the hallmarks will be speed and curiosity and courage to basically try massive amount of experimentation and moving with pace. So that's sort of how I see it. I think there'll be blurring between data science and marketing, like we've seen in the past, but it will be for reals, and then a technologist, right? So that's how I roughly see the marketing teams evolving, smaller, more nimble, with a real stripe of technology and AI running right through it, with data scientists doing machine learning, reinforcement learning alongside swarms of these agents to get things done.
Very cool. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you around this topic of like replacements of jobs or changing the way that
Uh-huh.
roles are kind of like structured within the companies. Um, a lot of folks are wondering like what happens to the entry level marketers. Like
Uh-huh.
everyone says, treat agents like they're a really
Yeah.
good, efficient intern that operates
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
And you're the marketer, you've got 10 years of experience, you understand the strategy,
Yeah.
you have experience, you can guide it. What about those like fresh grads? Like I know you have kids that are in school right now and they're going to hit the workplace, and like what advice do you have for companies thinking about investing in the next like workforce as these AI agents are able to replicate a lot of these like entry level roles? Like what are your thoughts with that aspect?
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows is the short answer. I think
Yeah.
it's a concern, right? I think you couple that with people tending to be not in the office with peers as much, and it's a challenge, right? So I'm not going to sit here and suggest it's not. My advice to my children, my son in particular, they're like AI natives, right? They're doing stuff
Hmm.
with AI that like blows my mind in terms of how they study, how they do research. I mean, just how they do pretty much anything. I guess therein lies a superpower, right? Like every company is trying to figure this stuff out. So how do you enable like vast swaths of your company, if not the entire company, to have these superpowers that AI unlocks? So my advice to my son is become like a super user, a power user of AI. You will be viewed as a magician, right? And this has been my advice going back for decades now, right? Whether I talk to a board, whatever, usually, not always, but people earlier in their life have, curiosity and they have more facility with tools. So find like a reverse mentor, right? We talk about
Hmm.
mentorship usually in like the gray haired guys, gals, like basically mentoring down. I'm a big fan of the other direction. Have a
Hmm.
reverse mentor, someone that shows you how they use technology. Right. I have a good friend who runs a venture capital shop. I'll never forget, like many years ago, he had like a bunch of like middle school and teenagers come. They had to focus on gaming, and they basically start talk to these kids, these teenagers, about how they thought about games, and it was mind blowing, right? Like
Hmm.
the future is here; it's just not evenly distributed. Is a very famous quote. And
Hmm.
well, how do you get to that future? Well, you talk to the younger generations, and you actually have the curiosity to basically sit beside them and actually watch how they think about stuff, and then ask them questions. Be curious, right? You talk about I'm a big fan of curiosity. That's how like, it's not just gonna be like, okay, well, there were used to be these entry level roles and they're gonna be the same. They're not. Let's stop pretending that. Let's actually start to think about new ways, new things that we can do that take advantage of the synergy, like the combination of humans plus yes, and plus these magical agents. I also have this belief too that like even individual contributors at any stage of their careers, they're going to be managers, right? Oh, you're gonna be managers of agents, but
Hmm.
the same things apply. Think about it. What's a great manager do? They do many things, but like they set really clear expectations and goals, right? So a manager and their team, their team member, they know what to expect. Oh, guess what? You provide really good feedback. You set context. You provide feedback, and then you delegate effectively, right? So that's how everyone's going to need to be. So I just don't subscribe to this notion that we're going to have a real like people are going to hit a wall. Let's think more creatively about it, right? Let's actually use these entry level folks to do. the things that they can uniquely do because they're more facile and more comfortable with this technology more so than anyone else almost in the company. So that's kind of my aspiration, my hope, and my advice to my 19-year-old son.
I love it. I think that's a really practical advice there. And yeah, I think everyone can learn a bit more from having a reverse mentor, especially when it comes
Yeah.
with new tech and also like new jargon and new sayings and keeping up
Yes,
with
it's
like
true.
pop culture there. Like there's a lot we can learn from younger folks. I'd be remiss, Chris, if we didn't at least touch on CDPs a little bit.
Uh-huh.
If you looked at Growth Loop's website a couple of months ago, or I don't know exactly the timing for the switch,
Mhm.
but the composable customer data platform was the kind of category that you guys were calling yourselves. Now you look at the website and you're seeing things that are more like compounded marketing engine.
Yeah.
CDPs promise things like customer 360, data activation, marketing
Uh-huh.
autonomy, omni-channel orchestration, all these buzzwords. They
Yeah.
all sound familiar to marketers. How do you ensure Growth Loop doesn't fall into the same trap with that compounded marketing engine? It doesn't become another buzzword in that category. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's about delivering results. I mean, I won't comment too unless you're interested in terms of CDP. We're all like, others say, like, by the way, GrowthLoop created the category of composable CDP. We didn't set out and name it that ourselves. They created it. Like Chris and David, coming out of Google, built software on top of BigQuery as an intelligent layer. So we didn't have those buzzwords back then, and for better or for worse, that wasn't something that they chose to do. But ultimately, we're setting out to bravely name and claim a category. We're calling it compound marketing, right? Just like compound interest in finance, like applied to marketing, right? It's about how do you get little gains compounded more rapidly to get the kind of outcomes or results that you need. So ultimately, like, I don't care what you do, if you're not delivering results, then you're not relevant. And, without that, like, those CDPs had caught the world by the tail and caught the world's imagination many years ago, but ultimately didn't have the type of breakthrough results that they were promised. Those promises were left unfulfilled, right? So, okay, how do you deliver results? When you think about a category, you can talk about features and efficiency, and that's important, but you can talk about growth and the benefits. And that's what we're doing with compound marketing, right? It's very clear what it is we're setting out to do. We're here to drive lifetime value or top line growth, right? And there are clear benefits for companies that embrace this philosophy. So that's what we're doing. Ultimately, it requires a product that's delightful too, right? A lot of these products were just hard to use. You really look at them. Like some of our customers have told us as we've swapped some of these out, I won't mention that I won't name the guilty, but 2% of their campaigns were being used by some of these CDPs. And it's like,
Hmm.
within weeks, we're actually using it for all of the campaigns. Like, this is a better approach. So ultimately, people want to, like, if they don't want to use your product, if they find it painful or tedious to use, the whole point is to enable self-service. If your product stinks, if it's designed poorly, then guess what? People are going to use it. So there's that part. And the last, I guess, is just being a really good partner, right? Do people view you as an extension of your team? Right? We've been really fortunate as a company to lean in and have that to be the case. Right? People do view us as an extension of their team. Are we perfect? Hardly. We have setbacks, and it's like any relationship. You got to work your way through it. But if you go look at G2 reviews as one data point, just one, we seem to be on the right track, right? People do enjoy partnering with us. They find our product easy to use, to get up and running quickly, partially because of the architecture and the design. So we're off to a good start. We have a lot of work to do. Let's be clear, but I think it's a brave and bold new chapter for the industry, and we like what we see in the early innings of the game here.
Super cool. You mentioned being a good partner and like an
Yeah,
extension of marketing teams. And
yeah,
something else you kind of teased out earlier was like a lot of teams are dealing with a ton of technical debt and like a
uh,
bloated MarTech stack. And I think
yeah,
what's harder than ever today for a marketing ops person or a person that works in MarTech is understanding the overlap of functionality between different tools. Like
yeah,
you're kind of evolving from the CDP category, and iPaaS tools are kind of going into AI agents, and customer engagement tools are now warehouse native and going into
Yeah.
AI agents. Like at some point in the next couple of years, the marketing ops person who's managing all these tools in their stack, all these tools are going to have AI agents, and we're almost going to be like wearing like a referee hat, deciding we're going to turn it on in this tool or not in that tool.
Yeah.
Like, what advice do you have for marketing ops folks that are in this midst of like having even more confusion with like Martech
Yeah.
overlap there and becoming like AI referees?
Well, I mean, reference a comment earlier about complexity, right? People are drowning in this complexity already. It's going to become more complex. So I think it's about being clear about what you're trying to accomplish, being really ruthless about the tools that actually are and the teams that actually have a mindset to iterate quickly, right? Like the sad reality is some of the larger players, the Adobe's and Salesforce, is just iterating at such a glacial pace. They're increasing their prices, their closed ecosystems. I mean, Salesforce has moved last week to cut off the Slack APIs. I just don't even know where to start on that. This is ridiculous. So they're not innovating at any pace. So, find partners that basically are going to innovate with you. That is essential, right? So try to reduce complexity. Now, look, it's kind of simple. Bet on the data cloud and agentic AI, right? Systems of record, as we currently know them today, have hit their high water mark, in my view. And the teams that win will basically be able to be clear about what they're trying to accomplish. As I said, reduce the travel and the distance between I have an idea that's going to move it, informed by AI, and then delivering the impact with as much pace as humanly possible. So I think it is going to be lean into the teams that can iterate quickly, that don't set false expectations, right? That say, look, here's where we are with our vision. There's our vision. We have a very clear vision about AI. It's probabilistic. No one really knows. And those who pretend otherwise are full of baloney. But then say, look, these are the things that are working really well right now. Let's embrace those. Let's also go on an expedition. We call our team the expedition pod that goes out like on an expedition to work with partners to say, hey, look, this is the frontier of this. This is like we're creating creative briefs with AI right now. We're actually generating images and VO3's breakthrough like a couple months ago, weeks ago now. Breathtakingly crazy cool. I wouldn't have thought we'd be doing video creation from agents like today if you'd asked me even a few months ago. So that's the work of the work here. It is going to be chaos. Embrace the chaos. Find partners who can iterate quickly and well, who are clear about a vision for the future and maybe a little softer on the path to get there, but do so together. Right. So, that's really the nature of it. Like I think that we're starting to see a separation in the industry already. Those who can deliver results and utility are going to win, and those who deliver fancy demos and vaporware, they're going to just not survive that low.
Yeah, great advice, Chris. I had two last questions for you. We're
Yeah,
coming
sure.
up on time here, but the 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index dropped about 3 weeks ago. We got an upcoming webinar. You, me, and Rebecca kind of dissecting that even further. When you got your hands on it and you read through some of the insights, like what were some of the things that popped out that were really surprising to you? That like you read through the data and you're like, oh shit, like this is a really interesting component to this angle here. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I was delighted to see that like the concept of speed and agility and velocity came through, right? That those that are actually are using AI are seeing that they can move faster. That was one. The pressure, I actually wasn't surprised totally, but the magnitude of the pressure and the fact that people felt it stepped up materially, perhaps it's a macroeconomic thing, I don't know, but that sort of surprised me that people have a lot of pressure, even more pressure than normal to perform,
Hmm.
right? We have short tenures in certain functions like CMOs because they've historically not delivered on a very short period of time. So I'm not totally shocked there, but the ability to use and view AI as part of the solution to that problem was something that was a pleasant surprise in my estimation. I think the fact that people are starting to get and connect the dots between the data quality and the need for oversight and governance as risks, not as excuses
Hmm.
to not move quickly or use this technology at all, but really that they're thinking about that as something that needs to be put in place. I thought that was a pleasant surprise as well. But like, look, we're going to continue to take pulse in terms of what's happening with marketers. Like, we want to be able to be a partner to cut through the noise, not just hand wavy nonsense, but to basically be a partner, just help them make sense of what the best are doing versus the rest. and then help them, guide them confidently on their journey, because this is a journey, right? We're very early in this journey. Let's be clear. So we're doing things like that with that purpose in mind.
Super cool. Yeah. So, folks listening, if you're curious to get your hands on that report, I got a vanity link that you can check out. It's go.growthloop.com/report. And I think there's some really cool insights that came out of that. Chris, I got one last question for you. You're
Sure.
obviously a CEO, board member, investor, advisor. You're also a father and a huge Toronto Maple Leafs fan, big golfer, avid cyclist, and
Yes.
hobbyist gardener. You got a ton of stuff going on in your life. One question we ask everyone on the show is, how do you remain happy and successful in your career? And how do you find balance between all the stuff you're working on while staying happy?
Well, I try. I don't always succeed. I might just have to point that out right off the top. But it's all about people and problems. To me, I'm very fortunate to work with incredible humans, be surrounded by a wonderful, loving family, both here and up in my homeland of Canada. That's really as simple as it is. Like, am I working with people that I enjoy? Am I wrestling with problems that, when solved, will make a difference? Is it a mission that matters in the world? And that's really at the root of it in terms of my professional life. And yeah, and I experiment at different times in my career. I've burnt out a lot, so I've tried to figure out ways to be able to surge my capacity and realize that you're going to be out of balance almost all the times. But whether it's getting out to tackle a hill on my bike with some dear friends and grab a beer afterwards, or I golf, but usually golf 3 or 4 holes at a time. Like, it's just something to get outside. But ultimately, just really be reflective and intentional about paying it forward, whether that's in the form of investing in upcoming entrepreneurs, typically Canadians, actually almost always, or really paying it forward in terms of people that whose careers I want to help shape. Right, that's what really is meaningful to me at this point. Right, I've been really fortunate to have incredible leaders that help shape my career and give me chances when I didn't deserve them. And I'm trying to do the same for many people in my professional and personal life too.
Awesome. Chris, appreciate that answer. Appreciate your time today. This is super fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Thanks.
The #1 conference for marketing ops and revenue ops professionals is back again this year. Block off your calendars from October 27th to the 29th in Anaheim, California. Grab your tickets at mopsapalooza.com while you enjoy some of the highlights from last year.
This event is legit.
Mopsapalooza is different because it's a practitioner's event.
Everybody learns from each other.
It's not a bunch of sales pitches.
This is the users community.
This year, we had over 300 submissions to speak. The sessions were selected and voted on by every single one of you. Marketing ops isn't just marketing. It's about so much more than that.
It's about getting inspired by each other to drive impactful change.
And when MoPros are fully aligned with broader business goals, we become the true driver of growth.
It is going to be an exciting few years ahead, and I really do believe that marketing ops is going to be at the absolute center of this.
See what's going on in the industry. You want to be on top of your game, this is the conference to come to.
It's the place to be. It's easily the best conference that you're going to go to all year.
Community is completely next level.